right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Ospreys, and welcome to everybody else here to McDuff Lives, my channel here on YouTube, and expanding out into the universe. We're on a number of other channels now, courtesy of Andy DeBala and the great folks at Neighborhood News Studio, who've been helping me so much with production and spreading the word about screamingospreys.com and our effort here to use my father's story as a vehicle to expose the truth of what's been going on in our world and our country basically during my lifetime as well as his. So yeah, okay, Kathy Sue, you know what happiness is, don't you? Yeah, because I know. I think I would start off by once again referring to this philosopher that we've been reading about in the book How the Nation Was Won by the name of Gottfried Wilhelm von Leibniz, Leibniz, Leibniz. And Leibniz lived back in the 1600s. And so he was a contemporary of Newton and of Locke, and was an influential philosopher who we don't hear about very much anymore. And this show this morning is kind of about answering the question, why? Why don't we hear about Leibniz, and what does he have to do with the founding fathers like Jefferson and Franklin in particular, who knew of him? So the Declaration of Independence. Here's the classic book on the Declaration of Independence by Carl I. Becker, a study of the philosophies that went into Jefferson's mind. Political, but honest, I think, and the honest ideas of our philosophers, American philosophers, have generally been based upon English and British philosophers earlier, and not so much of a German. But remember that Leibniz is a Hanoverian, and he is a advisor to the Electress or Princess Sophie of Hanover, who was in line for the throne of Great Britain after Queen Anne, except for something happened and she died first, and then her heir turned out to be none other than George the First of Hanover, who was a puppet for the oligarchs. So that dispute between people that wanted Sophie and the people that wanted Georg or George, who didn't speak English, by the way, is the same dispute that we have when I ask the question, pursuit of happiness or pursuit of property? So that's the subject of this morning. Are we happy because we have property? This is the implication that historians have put upon the Declaration of Independence. Andy, put the Declaration up there so I make sure I don't get the words wrong when I recite it, please. I just want to call attention to the beginning of it. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the situation. Well, let's skip down to the part where that we are endowed by our Creator. There it is. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Okay, let's stop there, and just you read that, you learned it in 8th grade, but we don't really have a government based upon the pursuit of happiness. No, and this is where I think the idea of philosophy and political philosophy in general becomes so obscure to people. How can you understand, if you have to read Rousseau and Kant and Locke and Wright and all the really verbose thinkers of the past? Well, it so happens I read them, and I read them in college, and I still didn't get it. Because what it really all boils down to is, what is the legitimate function of government? What is the legitimate function of government? Well, there are two competing theories, the theory of Leibniz and the theory of Locke. And the theory of John Locke is the one that is pushed upon us as we go through school as being the foundation of our revolution. Well, there's a big difference between the pursuit of happiness and the pursuit of property, or the ownership of property. So let me start with John Locke and give you my distillation of what I've read this morning. I published a lot of it over on Twitter in a thread this morning, which Dora has cited. And yeah, you can see a lot of my thoughts from this morning just by following that thread. Because what I've been working on is to integrate my studies of the LaRouche organization and the other new people that have come into my studies over the past year or so. And that's not it, Andy. Andy's going to scroll ahead. There's the thread. Thread complete. Punch on that thread there so I can read that. Slavery, this is what I want to get to. Slavery is, for Locke, merely the epitome of property rights. Quote, there is another sort of servants, which by a peculiar name we call slaves, who, being captives taken in a just war, are by the right of nature subjugated to the absolute dominion and arbitrary power of their masters. Really? Yeah, really. That's what they understood back then. That if you become a prisoner of war, then you are a slave. You are the absolute power. You are the absolute slave of the people that captured you. These men, having, as I say, forfeited their lives and with it their liberties and lost their estates, are being in the state of slavery, not capable of any property, cannot in that state be considered as any part of civil society, the chief end of which is the preservation of property. Wait a minute. Okay, so that's the essence of Locke. The chief end is life, liberty, and the preservation of property. His idea is that in a state of nature, everyone has to fight for what they want, right? And that means that when you get something, it's yours and you own the right to keep it personally. And that precedes the formation of a government. So that under that theory, a government doesn't have the power to take it away from you. As a matter of fact, this is the Dartmouth College case in a way. If you remember the Dartmouth College case, this is where one of the board of trustees wanted to maintain the ownership of the corporation that ran Dartmouth College. And the result of the case, and I don't remember the details, but the essence of the ruling was that the courts cannot take property away from you without due process of law, and therefore the people that were originally appointed as the trustees of the college were entitled to retain that trusteeship against some new group that wants to come in and control it. Maybe that's too much of an aside right now, but it strikes me as somebody who studied the law that this is a philosophical continuance of what we heard back in Locke's time. And this is back in the early 1600s, where he's saying that property is necessary to happiness. If I don't have land, then I don't have any way to defend myself. I don't have any way to grow food. I don't have any way to house my family or to even grow a family or to get married in the first place. You got nothing unless you've got property. So how can we be happy unless property is more important than government? Government's power does not extend to taking away my property. Okay? Well, we do have means to do it now, eminent domain, and we fashion a kind of a due process for the government to do that now. But the essential principle of Locke is that it is only property that gives us happiness. And therefore, it is the duty of government to preserve property, right? And not to take it away from you. Now, what that does is to keep the elite getting richer and the poor getting poorer. Especially when you put on top of that the sophisticated banking schemes of the 1800s and 1900s, where, like we were talking about yesterday, where the England borrowed money to go to war against France, and then created the Bank of England with the oligarchs, right? The rich people created the Bank of England in order to create promissory notes at interest that the government would then buy in order to pay the interest on the first loan. So these guys had this scheme that they were just not only taking the percentage off the top, but then they're also refinancing it and taking the percentage of that. And then every time that it rolls over, they're going to get another cut. This is the abuse of the power of government, according to Leibniz, but perhaps not according to Locke. Because Locke said, well, these guys are in a position to make themselves happier and happier and happier. So what's wrong with that? What's wrong with, Bill Gates getting rich as fast as he can, and getting every single penny that he can by scheming with corrupt people in the government to award him money? What's wrong with that if property is the key to happiness? And the corollary is that people that don't have property, really, unless you're going to get some, you're just kind of taking up space for a few years on the planet and not really contributing anything. You're going to be miserable, so why should you even be here? Hey, Don Matsia says, if it feels good, do it, eh? Well, no, that's not true, because that would be the state of nature in which anybody that wanted to go out and take something from somebody else could go do it, as long as you had a big enough club, or maybe some boys to come along with you and just take it. And that would be the state of nature. Okay. But what we're talking about is government, because none of us wants to go back to that state of chaos and anarchy that is the idea behind people like Hobbes and Locke that are saying, without government, there's just nothing. So we do have a government. That's why we have, the American Revolution, so that we could have a government to preserve our freedoms. So what is the purpose of government according to Leibniz? Okay. This is where the interesting part of what I've been studying is that I think we don't get this in school. But this is the key to the difference between the elite philosophy based on Locke and the pro-common man philosophy of Jefferson, where he, instead of writing life, liberty, and property, writes life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Why did he do that? Why did he do that? Why didn't he just go along with the old formula? Well, it's because he, as a humanist, he understands that there's more to life than dollars and cents. There's more to life than, what is your labor worth? How much can we suck out of this person before he's too old or infirm to work? That is not freedom in Jefferson's mind, and certainly not in the mind of those of us that consider ourselves to be Americans. We think freedom is something that makes you feel good. In other words, happy, pursuing happiness. So Leibniz says that happiness comes from pursuing human reason, using your brain, thinking of things, having ideas, and pursuing those ideas. I have an idea. I'm going to build a better mousetrap. Or I'm going to figure out a way to drive cars based on vegetable oil. Or I'm going to make my own rocket that'll go all the way up to outer space and come back down. Or I'm going to sail across the ocean and find a new way to accomplish things, and while you're crossing the ocean, or perhaps a new method of propelling, or maybe you've made up some new kind of wind power that you can use and make yourself some type of new energy generating thing. The idea of using your mind is what makes you happy. Okay. And if you're not able to use your mind, if all you do is punch the same hole in a piece of machinery every day, 1,000 times a day, or if all you ever do is accounting, you have to put numbers in columns all day long. If all you can do is run a computer, or nowadays, if all you can do is do what your computer tells you to do, then you're succumbing to that elite idea that, you can't be happy unless you have property. So since you don't have any property, you better try to make some money. You better get into the rat race. Join that rat race, And while you won't be happy, at least you'll feel like you're going to make your kids happy, because you'll try to put some money away and maybe they'll be happy. So how do you make Leibniz's government happen? How do you have a government of happiness? A government that's whole reason for existing is to make the subjects or the citizens happy. Well, what you do, first of all, is you establish sovereignty. And that's what the Declaration of Independence is about, is to say, Great Britain, you've lost your right to be our sovereigns. you can't do it anymore because you're doing nothing but turning us into slaves. Even the people that are not formally indentured, you still have got so many rules against us. We can't create our own industries. We can't make finished products and sell them overseas. We can't do trading with the Spanish or the French or the Portuguese. We can only do certain things that are allowed under the laws of the Empire of Great Britain, and that restricts us so much that we can't be happy. So if we can't be happy, you lose your right to govern us. See? So we have to leave. And that's why we established the United States, to pursue happiness. Now, there's something funny that happened between the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, right? The pursuit of happiness dropped out of our fundamental law. It doesn't say in the Constitution that we have the right to happiness or to the pursuit of happiness. It doesn't say that. Andy, if you would just Google the words "pursuit of happiness" by itself, and there's a Wikipedia article on that. You know what? I have to learn how to share my screen. Maybe I can do this. Now, if you can go to that "pursuit of happiness" article on Wikipedia, that would be cool. I saw this just before the show, and let's see. It's not that one. It's go back one level. Okay. Yeah. There it is. There it is. Okay. Look at this. Wikipedia. The pursuit of happiness may refer to: 1, pursuit of happiness, a human right which is recognized in some countries. Or life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, a phrase in the United States Declaration of Independence. And then that's it. Other than saying there's a number of films and some music using those words, that's the only thing that it says. A human right which is recognized in some countries, right? Well, not our country, right? Not our country. There is where John Locke got back into our government, is where we lost that phrase that we were entitled to the pursuit of happiness. And we're back to a situation where, as far as the law is concerned, we do not have the right to the pursuit of happiness. It's not in the Bill of Rights. It's not in the Constitution. Yet, when we talk about being Americans, it's the first thing we think of is, all men are created equal, and all men have certain inalienable rights. Inalienable means nobody can take them away. And that means the Constitution didn't take them away. Nobody can take it away. And that among those inalienable rights is the pursuit of happiness. Okay? So this is really all I wanted to say this morning, and I'm gonna make it a short show because I've got a lot that I've got to do. I'm doing a lot of serious reading in preparation for the show tomorrow morning with Doug Valentine. I've been back and forth with him on the email, and we're preparing a really, really tight, interesting show for you tomorrow morning that he has asked me to focus on certain aspects of his work. So I really am going to be doing the best I can to get Doug's essential message out from his books tomorrow morning. So I'm gonna wrap it up a little early this morning so I can do a little more study than I usually do for a show. But yeah, Douglas Valentine. So this is really the point of this morning is that we all have a right to pursue happiness, that it is inalienable, that it is part of our American essence, that if you're an American, then you claim the right to pursue happiness. And if you want to be happy, then you need also to help others to be happy, to treat others as you would have them treat you. If you want to be happy, well, the best way for you to be happy is to make all the people around you happy. What can I do to make my wife happy? What can I do to make my family happy? What can I do to make the people that I work with happy? And what can I do to make the world generally a happier place? And as we pursue that through our God-given reason to figure out how can we make America a place where people are able to pursue their happiness and that government supports that happiness, the first thing we have to have is sovereignty. We have to have a sovereign nation. And of course, that is what's under attack by these New World Order folks. They are the ones that want to just keep all the wealth and let the rest of us fade away. We can't let it happen. We have to keep working together and spreading the word. So the word for this morning is the pursuit of happiness. And the philosopher of the day is Gottfried Leibniz, Leibniz. And please take your time and study his work more. I think you're going to really like his approach to life. And it's not too complicated compared to Kant or Locke or Hobbes, who are really kind of bending over backwards to preserve the property rights of the elites.